This is a very different episode from ones we've done before. And it's an episode that we've thought long and hard about doing because it's a very difficult conversation, but a conversation that we feel cannot be ignored. And that's a conversation about suicide, particularly men and suicide. The rates of suicide in general are far too high. But when you understand that almost 75% of suicides are men, we now have an epidemic. In the UK, someone dies by suicide every 90 minutes. That's the length of a football game. And the same rates apply in Australia, in America, and in most countries that publish their figures. Now, I appreciate this is a very difficult subject, and I appreciate that for some people, this may trigger a memory of someone they know well who attempted or indeed did die. I am also very close to suicide. I've looked it in the face and I see it regularly in people very close to me. But we believe that the topic cannot be ignored. We understand it's a complex subject. We understand there's no easy answer to this. We understand that governments have a role to play. We understand that communities have a role to play. And we understand that we all have a role to play in supporting our friends, our family members, our people within our own circle who are in danger of or are about to attempt suicide. So from that perspective, we've decided to tackle the subject head on. So I've invited Stuart O'Neill onto the show today. Stuart is the author of this little book, Just One Reason. It's a profound book, and it came out of his own experience of planning his own suicide and then finding just one reason to not do so. And he discovered a simple but very profound way of tricking his brain to postpone any suicidal ideations or planning thoughts and decisions. The book is now in its 10th reprint, and it is providing very useful and in some cases profound help and impact for people who read it. At the end of our conversation, I'm going to share with you some reflections, some thoughts, and of course a whole list of resources for anyone who wants to get further information or help about this very important topic. Let's start here. The story of you leading into writing this phenomenal little book, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, because it's a phenomenal outcome. The story that led you into that moment. As I understand it, you weren't someone who had many months or many years of depression. You were someone who became suicidal quite quickly. Tell us whatever you'd like to share with us about that.
So my marriage had fallen apart for a whole variety of reasons, and not something, I guess, to unpack here. If I can just go back a little, I think as a male, you hear often that men are blindsided, that all of a sudden their marriage is over. And I think women, or the person who's separating, but say in this instance with me as a female, is I think that they make their decision a long time before it all happens. And so they've grieved in the presence of the household and established what they're going to do next and built themselves up to that day. And for the man, it comes down like a ton of bricks, even though if they're honest, or I'm honest with myself, I knew my marriage was not going well.
Yeah.
But did I think it was going to end, or did I think I was going to discover what I did the way that I was going to discover it? So back in those days, I had a basic formula for our family, and that was that every year we had to have more holidays this year than we did last year.
Okay.
And that was as simple as it got. And so the only way that the numbers could be counted is if they were two consecutive numbers and at least three members of the family were together. If it was anything else, it didn't get put into the tally. So by the time I was in Taiwan, for the story here, is I think we were up to 51 or 52 days a year that we'd be away as a family.
That's a significant amount of time.
And so what I concluded then, just being an everyday bloke, was that if we're away for 52 and we're more than last year, things must be all right. That was it. If next year it drops back to 48, I'm like, what happened? Do I need to look at it? If it dropped down to 46 or the pattern started to decline, I'd need to go and look at some other things. So I fully understood systemizations and not having to work every hour to earn every dollar. Like I liked earning a dollar while I was asleep, so to speak. So with that, I conquered eBay at some point in time. I just kept watching these purchases coming through the mail from what my wife was buying, not necessarily what she was buying, just the frequency. And so I started to study eBay and learned a fair few things. So that took me overseas a lot, buying products and getting things manufactured and back. And so,
as in you made a career business out of it.
Yep. I reinvented myself again and did eBay and did a really, really good job out of it. And so on one of my trips to China, I decided that I'd stop via Taiwan for the first time. And when I was in Taiwan is when my world fell apart. My wife back at the time, she really, really enjoyed using online clairvoyance. And so I'd constantly see coming through the PayPal account, the receipts. And, you know, I probably shouldn't admit, but I rolled my eyes a lot of the time and just go, $88 comes through and it says you're on the phone, or however you do it. Like I was never privileged to what was discussed. And I just see that it was 12.5 minutes, someone in London or somewhere else that the person that, you know, they're never going to meet. And here's the bill out of my PayPal account. I'm like, no, well, if that's what's keeping you going, no problems. On this particular occasion, I got the receipt and the transcript for the first time.
In the receipt.
Which
you hadn't asked for.
Which I hadn't asked for.
Yeah.
And so I started to read the transcript, and it, you know, starts out the person's name, the date of birth, married, kids, all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden it said, and my new partner and his date of birth and all of these other bits and pieces. And I'm like, blindsided.
Yep.
Completely blindsided. So then it wasn't even that I started to see his date of birth, it was how far progressed things were, and asking, is this going to be the man for life? And my kid's going to like him. I think he's going to be a better dad to my boys than my current husband is, all those sorts of things. So it was just like, it wasn't just that my marriage was in question. You are now actually saying, I think there's another person out there that can do a better job at raising her children. So it was as big a slap.
That's a dagger to the heart.
That's a dagger to the heart, correct.
Yeah.
So that was, yeah, that's when I've basically went, you know what, I'm out. Is if you don't think I can be a good parent, not even necessarily a good husband, I'm like, I'm done. Like, what's the point? You might as well have what you want. And maybe you're right. Maybe I'm better off not here. And the kids will be better off with this other person. And so I made all my plans. And I thought I did an okay job looking back on it, you know, like I made myself, you know, some things so that whoever found me over there wasn't going to have to go scratching the surface too hard to work out who's this person, how do I identify them, all that sort of stuff, you know. And so I set off to go and do what I was going to do. And on the way there, I changed my mind because I felt guilty, because I realised it involved another person.
Yeah.
Because what I wanted to do, Pod, is if I was going to take my life, I couldn't let my kids know that it was suicide. I wanted them to forever and in a day think, hopefully, that I was their hero, but, you know, that I'm their dad, and that dad didn't check out. Their dad was just an idiot and should have looked right, but instead he looked left and stepped in front of a moving vehicle.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, I'm like, that's a pretty selfish thing to do, because the other person isn't opting in to do that. And then they're going to have that on their conscience for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So in that moment, that became my one reason. And it all started there. I didn't know that that was the start of one reason, because there would be more of those one reasons, different ones later. But that was the seed right then.
you've written uh, in the book Just One Reason, you describe that moment. You describe driving to this person's house. You describe stopping. You describe how you had written your notes, and therefore the police were called, and then they kind of intervened and helped you in that moment. You also say that you had made multiple plans. What goes through? And I should say, the reason I'm interested in asking you is I'm very close to this, as you and I have talked before, and I've watched people very close to me ideate, plan, even take action. And it's an extraordinary jump from ideating, where you just think about it, to actually doing something. And a lot of us at different times of our life may ideate. A lot less of us do something. Yeah. Um, what's it like when you are making plans? Like, what's the process to do that?
For me, um, it's probably 5 days a week, every day, every week of the year for me. There's barely a day where I don't have that thought in some capacity. And then it's whether or not will I or won't I, or if I do, how. And, behind everything is, I know that I'll break my children's heart. And so that's certainly, a common reason that everyone else would share. But I know that I'll shatter my mum and she won't survive. That'll be the end of her for certain. And, I'm the golden child by the distance of the Melbourne Cup straight.
Right.
And
Very special.
yes. And so there's a flow-on effect here that if I'm to do that and then my mum's health deteriorates to the point that she passes away, now I've just broken my boys' hearts again.
For their grandma.
For their grandma, because they absolutely adore her.
Yeah.
And she's the funnest, crudest, naughtiest 80-year-old lady you've ever met in your life. And so my boys have an amazing relationship with their grandmother.
So it sounds like for you, this wasn't a one-off. This is an ongoing struggle and an ongoing process that you bump up against.
Constantly.
Yeah.
And, only recently, like when I say recent, like in the last 1 to 2 years, there's been times where I've gone, and I still have this little voice inside my head, is that like, it needs to look like an accident so that people, how is it that a person writes a book on suicide prevention and then takes their life? Is like, I feel like, well, I'll have failed. My book's dead if that was to happen. And so I feel like underneath everything, my book's almost an insurance policy for me now in that regard. And so there was a time there at Deepwater where I couldn't cross the road in the car to go to the post office to post more books for fear of intentionally stuffing up and not looking left or right, and a truck cleans me up out the front of the pub.
Yeah. So there's a black dog hanging there that persists. Yeah. I want to jump to the book because as I said, that's how I came across you, and that's how we are very proudly supporting what you do and getting involved with this. And so I was really keen to have you here to talk to people who don't know what you've written about and the impact it's having. It's such a simple, beautiful, and profound book that, it's pocket size, it's user friendly, it's got all this kind of sturdiness from a design point of view, yet it's now in its 9th reprint, over 50,000 copies already, which is extraordinary for a self-published book of this kind. And what strikes me is when people, read it for the first time, the start of it is so raw with your story. It allows the conversation to emerge that I think is often just not discussed. It's just kind of hidden because it's a hard conversation to engage with. But it also, what strikes me about it is the sense of love that emerges from this through the way you wrote it and the way you embrace the conversation is, I think, quite extraordinary, which is one of the reasons why it's such a special book. 50,000 people, or 50,000 copies rather, are in circulation. Who reads it? Like, who uses it?
Who reads it? Well, it's probably who reads it that I didn't expect to read it. Because when I wrote that, I thought it was just for men.
Right.
And so in the early days, my first exposure to online trolling or trawling, whatever people giving pointed comments to you, is that I got attacked, that why didn't I write a version for women?
Right.
And so my answer back then was, well, 75% of all suicides are male.
Yeah.
And I'm a male.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a book for men.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I got enough of that sort of feedback that I say, if you feel that strongly, you should write a book for the 25%, but I've done my job.
Yeah.
And so I always thought it was just going to be for men. But a few profound things happened really, really early on. And the first one was just as we were ready to go to print, my mum knew what I was doing, of course, and writing the book, and she was there every step of the way. When I got arrested and then you put into, the psych ward and those sorts of things, like the one constant in all of this was my mum. And so she's seen me at those lowest points more than once. And so I gave a draft to my mum, but it was a printed hard copy like this, but the first one, but it wasn't the final copy yet. And so I said to Mum, take it away, give me your feedback. I want you to just come back to me as though you read a book. You've got to try not to do the mother's love part,
Yeah.
And so when I eventually got the book back off my mum, I said, what did you think of the book? And she said to me, I wished I'd had this when I was a young girl. And I knew exactly what she was talking about with her childhood.
Right.
And so clearly the things that had happened to my mum as a child with sexual abuse, clearly back then she'd thought of suicide often. So now there's no difference between men and women when it comes to pain and hurt and loss.
We're all human.
Grief. We're all human.
Yeah.
And so that was my first little, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And then in early days of the journey, a woman contacted me from Melbourne who still follows me prolifically, and she had a child who's around the age of 10 who was suicidal, and he'd turned mute. And so for whatever was happening in the young fella's world, he'd gone quiet. He'd stopped reading books. And so I don't know how it is that my book came to be in front of her son, but it did. And so the woman contacted me and said, congratulations on your book. No idea what happened between the book and my son, but it's the first book he's read in 3 years, and he's talking again.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm like, didn't expect that either. So this pattern continued, Pod, where I'd just continually be shocked as to who was reaching back to me very quickly. Like in the first 100 copies, I'm already getting contact from people thanking me and going, wow, this is a bit profound. I didn't expect this. And then people would contact me that I just wouldn't expect. So the person who was my webmaster at the time, his wife, she'd lost her father to suicide. And so she wrote to me, and I barely knew the webmaster's wife. And she wrote to me and said, if I'd had this book, maybe my dad would still be alive. Mm. And so the feedback, it hasn't stopped. It's just the wave is getting bigger and bigger, and the diversity is even wider than I could have ever imagined. Like this,
you've had people get tattoos on the back of reading this book, haven't you?
On their legs, on their arms. It's just incredible. Like a person The first time I got exposed to that, a person had been through a Lifeline program, and they have a workshop that's intensive for, like, say, a week after there's been an unsuccessful attempt. They get pretty, intensive counselling and so forth. And so my book is part of that Lifeline program. And they just happened to be, by coincidence, I was in Port Macquarie because I get around a bit anyway. So they knew that I was around. And so I just randomly popped in, and they sprung a quick speaking session onto me for about, I think from memory, it was about 12 individuals, and their carers were all in the room. And so they just introduced me to say, this is the author of the book happens to be in Port Macquarie. G'day, Stuart, this sort of thing. And then it morphed into chatting to them for 20 or 30 minutes. And then I got an email like 48 hours later from Lifeline with the photo and the story to say that the person had written to them, and it's the first time he's really felt like he's on top of things. And so it's, I don't know, have I stepped away from your question as who's reading it? Doctors are reading it, psychiatrists prescribe it. It's everywhere.
Some universities have it as part of their
It's
curriculum.
a university. It's in a university program at Southern Cross University. It's in shirt pockets at police officers, ambulance peoples. It's in 20 countries. It's translated already into German. It's had its first translation into Maltese. Like,
And
there's no stopping it now.
what that says to me is it's going to places that people need it, as opposed to you taking a business approach and we're publishing all over the world. Like that's not what's happening. It's an organic word of mouth process and a word of need process. That's where it's going to. And I think what's so interesting about this is, the book, as I said, it's a small book. It takes 10 minutes to read, but the process that sits within it, Find Just One Reason, is a 30 to 60-second process. And that's why it's so simple. It's so accessible. So for folks who have never heard of this, just give us a sense of what that is, that just one reason and that process you outline.
What it is, Pod, is like, people talk about a light bulb moment or a paradigm shift, but it's literally along those lines. And what I've learned to do with myself is that your brain has multiple voices, and they all talk to you. Well, to me anyway, I've got about 10, I think, in there. They talk to you at different times of the day about different things, and my wife will say, why can't we put some music on a 6-hour drive? I'm like, I'm busy, I'm busy. Can't you hear?
There's an orchestra playing in my head.
Fully.
Yeah.
And so your brain can also play tricks on you.
Yeah.
And some of those tricks can be really, really shitty, nasty tricks. And I feel like what the book does is it teaches you to play a trick back on your own brain. And so when your brain's saying, I've had enough and I'm checking out, I've trained my brain to go, hang on a minute, not today, because you're going to do that tomorrow, or that might happen tonight. So I've taught my brain to be able to flick the switch and come up with an excuse to not. And so just when I'm at my absolute worst, I'm like, oh, God, hang on a minute. No, I can't actually. And so the book does that for you. And the more you read it, whilst it's only a 10-minute book, there's some books you'd only read once in your lifetime. I've heard from people that have read the book every week for 2 years. And so it can become an ingrained habit of how to trick your brain to, when your brain's trying to flick the switch to say, we're done here. The book teaches you to flick the switch back and say, no, we're not.
Yeah. Is there any question that stands out as being the question that people talk to you about, or the one that you hang on to? Because in effect, this is I don't want to say a self-coaching book. That's not the right word, but you're tricking yourself to find a reason to not do this, because I've just decided and I've written down, if I'm not here, then X or Y needs to happen or can't happen. Like, that's the process here, right?
Pretty much. So I think, having spoken to so many people in regards to the book and the questions, is everyone knows that they're going to leave damage. They know people are going to be brokenhearted and disappointed and all of those other questions. But it's like, when you then ask yourself, is like, as one of the questions in there is like, what don't you want to happen? And it could be like, well, I don't want someone having my dog. Or what's going to happen to your ute? Or what happens here? So it's the consequence part that I think is part of the training of your brain, rather than going, of course, my parents or my children or a relative or a friend, of course, they're all going to be sad and coming to the funeral. But it's just like, I feel like it's that, what happens to my membership, or what happens to this over here? And so the consequences, I think, is a driver for people. And so that's why it forms part of the psychology of the book. Like the number of highly medically trained people that have asked me whether I've got a medical background, because they're surprised at the types of questions and the order of the questions. And they're like, are you sure? You haven't had clinicians help you write this book? And I was like, no, I'm just what you see, footy shorts and thongs type of bloke, know.
I reread it last night because I haven't read it every week since I got it, but I've read it a few times. But I reread it last night, and I was reminded of an episode that I went through 15 or 16 years ago that I had forgotten. And the question that came up in your book is, if I choose not to be here, what happens next? Now, I can say, in all honesty, that's the question that went through my mind 15 years ago. But it's like a lot of folks, I went through a divorce, and there was moments post that were pretty tough for a range of different reasons that we don't need to go through right now. But my memory that I had forgotten about that came through last night is I found myself lying on the floor of my kids' bedroom, who were 8 and 3 at the time, and thinking, and I couldn't get off the floor. I couldn't get off the floor. And I was thinking to myself, and I remember this really heaviness, but I remember thinking to myself, oh, okay, this is it. Like, this is like, I got to go now. And then the next thought was, well, if I'm not here tomorrow, who feeds the kids? And then my next thought was, my younger child, he had some special food issues at the time. And my thought was, the neighbors won't even know how to feed him. Okay, well, better be here tomorrow morning. And the same happened the next night. And the same happened the third night. And then by the fourth night, it was gone, right?
That's the consequence.
And I had forgotten that episode, although I have told that episode to a few people over the years. But a few things about it. One is, the moment in time for me was 3 days. So it wasn't a long moment in time, but nonetheless, it was a moment in time. But if I hadn't thought through that question of what happens tomorrow morning if I'm not here for my children, and this bizarre thought of, oh, the neighbors won't know how to feed him, which of course they would have, right? But that's what stopped me going, okay, there's a next step. Okay, I didn't take the next step. I didn't take the next step the second night or the third night. And that's what I think is so profound and so simple about this process, is there's a couple of questions that force you to read and force you to think and encourage you to write down. And that becomes a ladder out of darkness.
Definitely. When I was designing the book, not its content, and because you said something before that you felt like, that you can tell that there's love inside the book, and there clearly is. But for me, the love starts the moment you pick it up. It feels solid. It feels substantial. It doesn't feel like a paperback or a $4.99 book on special at the front of the counter and point of sale area. It's like the moment you pick it up, for me, I feel a person's already curious. What is this thing? It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's small and it's heavy, and if you tense your fingers around it, like, you can't bend it. And so, I feel that sort of stuff is step one. Is like, the questions are, of course, highly important, but I feel the relationship that you form with your book, it commences the day you actually pick it up and physically hold it, not
Yeah.
not just when you start to read it.
Yeah. And you can put it in your pocket and keep it and remind yourself. Yeah. You mentioned your mom a few minutes ago, and I don't want to dive into her story, but it sounds like you writing this book brought you and she together in ways that was a lot stronger than even the great relationship you already had.
Yeah,
Is that right?
I think so. We've had a pretty what would you say? I've almost been the parent to my parents since I was 20, and so I was my mum's rescuer already as a teenager from my father, and so we've just had. And I know lots of people say, yeah, but I have a bond, and it's like it's a bond like no other.
Mm.
And my mum is my number one fan, my number one defender. Like, just, gosh, if you get on the wrong side of my mum, then you need to really, really watch your back. Like, she's crazy, right? Beautiful, but crazy as. And so I knew early days that something pretty bad had happened to my mum, in a whole different variety of ways, and that I knew that because, unfortunately, I never got to know my grandfather. Like, there was just basically no contact, and it bothered me a bit. I was a bit annoyed as a kid growing up to go, I'm surrounded by a lot of these Jewish kids, and they've all got grandparents and they've been through their situation. And here I am, this little Aussie who doesn't have one. I felt really hard done by that. I never had a grandparent growing up because on my dad's side, his father had already passed away because of the war. And so I was a bit annoyed at that in some ways. But as I got older, I started to learn the stories, and I fully understood more and more of what happened to my mum, and how she's survived is a story in itself. And even now, I can't prove it, but I see it from time to time. Like, I would say up until 5 years ago, like, my mum still cuts herself. And I said, Mum, how did you do that? And she'd be like, oh, I walked into something. And I'm like, no, you didn't, Mum. I know.
Ongoing trauma.
Ongoing trauma. So I guess in our bond in there, Pod, is it like, I'm really, really aware that you have that scar for life, and my mum will take her scars with her. And I think there's a kindred spirit in there, is that she's seen me completely broken. And so we're there for each other. And I've been there for my mum when she's been completely broken a few times too. So, apart from having mother and son, like, we have that unique aspect where we don't even talk about our mental health too much. We just know that we know.
Yeah. Yeah. It does highlight for me, though, and something that I don't think is ever talked about, is, we who are in our 50s or, midlife, we're in this real sandwich generation. We are at the stage of life where we could be very independent, or almost are, and yet we're still, in many cases, taking care of our parents, and in some cases still taking care of our teenage, young adult kids, and in some cases grandchildren, and we're kind of caught in the middle of it. And I think it'd be easy to underestimate our parents grew up in a generation where they didn't have the privilege or the toolkit to talk and learn about stuff, to overcome whatever issues they overcame. Not just the war, like whatever they overcome. And therefore they might be carrying stuff into their 70s, 80s that is showing up in crankiness or whatever way it's showing up, that we might just write off as being their old, but actually it's not. It's something else. And I think what you've highlighted is just, the sense of be patient and be open to each other is a valuable trait.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just going to pause for 1 second. If you've got this far, that means you must be enjoying the show. Thank you for watching. We have a plan to build out a whole lot more shows just like this. And to do so, we need your help. The platform amplifies shows that have higher eyeballs and subscriptions. So to help us attract guests that you will find very interesting, please press like and subscribe. That way, we can attract the guests that you want, and we won't let the old man in. Now, on with the show. Can I talk about something very different? You are renowned for speaking to small groups, large groups, anyone that'll have you really to talk about this topic because you're so passionate about it. I've seen you talk. You are really good at it. And you're now embarking on what can only be described as extraordinary trips to rural parts of Australia, where you fly into these huge cattle farms to deliver bundles of your books and talk to people. You've recently been out to Broken Hill and parts of New South Wales. Tell us some of the experiences you've had out there.
The experiences out there, I think, are underpinning all of that is that, like, I'm a real, like, if not you, then who? I'm that sort of, I've got that drive. And, you know, I get frustrated at the lack of support that's available to everyone in general. And then I get, you know, frustrated at incompetence and things that could be getting done. And, you know, when you've eked a living out for yourself most of your life, I can get $4 out of $1 and make it go far. And when you observe other things around the health system, you feel like they only get 10 cents in the dollar. And so all of those sorts of things, you know, and I'm in a rural area where our pub is. And so whilst the farms are a different size and, you know, they're doing not necessarily crops and things where out west where I've been, is it's still all the same. And when we opened up the pub, again, I thought it's just going to be for the men and farmers and workers and things. And before we'd even opened, there'd already been 2 situations where females had come to us. And going out to Broken Hill is, I now know that I'm not going out there to see just the men or just the sons or just the male workers or just the father. Is hidden behind all of that is the females, whether they're the daughters or the mothers or the grandmothers, they're actually just about carrying the entire organisation on their shoulders. Yeah. Awake at night, panicking about whether their brother's going to be okay or their father. And so, you know, the stories out there is like, you know, in that day of landing 29 times, I only got the opportunity, because we're on a tight schedule, to have miniature chats. And all I could think of is that I hope I can get back here someday and explore that chat. I met a lady, and she didn't reveal this to me, but the pilot did, that she was involved with the Landline newspaper. And I certainly wasn't going to raise that. But this woman just had the most incredible knowledge, recall, humour. I could have stood there and spoke to her for 4 hours and we wouldn't have both come up for air. And she was just so thrilled that she's like, "Who's he?" hopping out of the plane. And then as soon as he introduced me, then she's like, "You're on ABC, weren't you? You're Stuart O'Neill." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, she remembered my name, right? Yeah. And "You're the book." And she's like, "What are you doing out here?" You know, all these sort of questions. Yeah. And so that was pretty cool. And then another place that we landed at, they already had previously bought my book. Mm-hmm. And so this is a place called White Cliffs, which is miles north of Broken Hill, heading towards the Queensland border. And so one of the persons at the farm, presumably she's the wife, I haven't met her, but she emailed me and she said, "Oh, thanks for the books. She said, I don't know if you noticed, but I was waving at you from the back of my horse as you were taking off on the runway. And it's just like people got it.
Yeah.
You know, a fellow that I spoke to out there, he probably had, I wouldn't say he had the biggest impact, but, you know, certainly, it just resonated that we're doing the right thing here. So Broken Hill to Wilcannia by road, I think, is 3 or 4 hours. It's like there's nothing there. And so he told
This
me...
is Mad Max territory for anyone
fully,
who doesn't
fully
know where Broken Hill is.
Yeah,
Think
yeah,
of Mad
fully.
Max the movie. That's where you are.
Correct. Yeah. It's there. And so in 2009, he attended a mental health training workshop in Wilcannia. And in that workshop, he learned a few skills that he still has today. And so he sort of, I guess, is like the informal counsellor
For that area.
spread across maybe 500 kilometres, where he's mentoring other farmers to say, this is what's going to be happening. The drought's here, or it's a year to come, or it's got 3 years to go, and all of these other bits and pieces, and how to prepare them a bit more with their expectations, how to manage their money, managing their mental health. And I'm like, you're a legend.
Yeah.
You're a legend. You've been doing this for 16 years. But what really struck me was I'm the only other person that he's seen in 16 years.
In this area, in this conversation. Yeah.
That's it. He goes, the last time anyone spoke to me in this sort of capacity as a resource was 2009. I'm like, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
That to me is all the fuel that I need, Pod, to go, I'm going to be doing this again and again and again, because if he hasn't seen someone for 16 years, then it confirms my beliefs that the government just aren't doing enough with their dollar.
Yeah. You're about to go on a big trip in October, and we're excited that Ush from our editing team is going with you to record it. Tell us what you're hoping to do.
So we're going to do a similar repeat, but over a longer period of time, starting in the same location with a different plane, same pilot, different plane, a bigger plane this time. And
you're going from a 2-seater to what, a 4-seater or a 6-seater?
A 2-seater to a 6-seater.
Okay.
And we're going to go to a number of towns and cattle stations, and I think we're away for 3 to 4 nights. And we're talking to football clubs, and wherever we can get an audience, basically, that's where we're going. And my brief to the pilot, he said, so where else do you want to go? And I said, if you can land the plane in the main street of a dusty town out the front of a pub, I said, we're going in there. And I said, and I'll do a talk there. I said, wherever you can put the plane down, I don't care if I talk to 1 person or 100 people, we will find people to talk to. And that's pretty much the whole purpose, is let's just get as many books far and wide. And we don't stop at a station and give 1 book. We give 4.
Okay.
Because there's no point.
With them and 3 other people.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they don't yet know who those other 3 might be.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we've got to flood that region. I can already sense, I had a meeting before I came here today to see what it would look like to design an office caravan type thing that could be on the ground, so that I'm not reliant on a plane. So I had, just before we came here, I had a 2-hour meeting with a fabricator here in Mount Druitt in Sydney to go, what would it look like to have a towable office to carry stock, somewhere that I can sleep anywhere I want. No shower, no shower, no toilet. And, you know, maybe one day I'm doing that for a year.
Yeah.
Did I tell you what happened on the way out to Broken Hill?
You told me quite a few things happened to Broken Hill. Tell me.
Because I own a pub, I love going to pubs, and
I want to come back to the pub in a minute. It's so important.
So, you know, I love popping in and out of a pub, having 1 beer, seeing what it's like. You know, just I'm forever curious and forever thirsty. You know, so we came across this pub that was just amazing, called the Spring Ridge Hotel. And there was a party going on. Like, we got in at like 5 or 6 o'clock. There was a party underway, only a small one, because little towns like that don't have hundreds of people for a party. 12 people is a party. And so the owner of the pub, a woman, came up to me. She said, oh, what are you guys up to? And I said, oh, glad you asked. And so I went and got a poster out of the car and said, we're off to Broken Hill. I'm doing this. And she said, oh, and what's going on? What made you do this and whatnot? And I said, I wrote a book on suicide prevention and we're taking my book out back because they don't get access to it. And unbeknownst to me, I triggered the lady like instantly. And so she quickly revealed that she'd lost her son 4 years ago at the age of 19. And, it's forever raw. That wound never heals. And so we had a hug, a really good chat. It was like almost an informal counselling session, but it was almost from her to me in a sense too. It was pretty remarkable because then I have this, as I said before, when we were driving the car, I'm having a conversation with 8 people at once. And in that moment, I was having, a conversation with her, but I had another one coming in over the other side going like, here we go again. It doesn't matter where I stop and where I bring a book.
There's someone who is affected. Yeah.
There's someone affected and there's someone who wants the book.
Yeah.
And so, we hugged it out. I went to the car, got her a copy of the book, and then didn't see her for a little while. And then she came back up to me, because we're staying the night, came up to me, let's say half an hour later, and just said, have you got more of the books? And I go, yeah, of course, we're on the way to do what we're doing. She's like, can I get 4 more? She said, I have 4 young fellows here in this town or village of maybe 100 people that are on suicide watch. Can I please have 4 copies? So off to the car I go. So the fact that I got there by car, not plane, didn't make any difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's irrelevant.
Just getting there and sharing the story and giving a resource. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've mentioned in October you're going to visit a whole range of places, including football clubs, and you just mentioned about young folks. Let me read something out to you. I've heard you in the past say that mental health and suicide are global problems requiring global solutions. And a few weeks ago, I was blown away to watch a video put out by the Brighton and Albion Hove Football Club in the Premier League in the UK. And it's part of an association between the Premier League and the Samaritans in the UK. And it's a proactive campaign called Together Against Suicide campaign. And they are now playing this video at football games at halftime. The Samaritans have got quite involved in offering services to help people listen better to each other, etc., i.e., just be aware and help each other if need be. The Richard Masters, who's the Premier League's chief executive, said, sadly, suicide is an issue that affects people of all ages from all backgrounds. We believe football can play a vital role in reducing the stigma around it and connecting fans who are experiencing suicidal thoughts with the support that they need. And the statistic that blew me away was in the UK, someone dies from suicide every 90 minutes, i.e. the length of a football game. Now, it's not quite as high in Australia, but it's not far off it, right? Julie Bentley, who's the chief executive of the Samaritans, she said, a moment of connection can be all it takes to save a life. Hence, this is why we created this video. So I want to play it for you because in my mind, this video is very similar to what you were doing with your book, is creating a connection. So let me play it for you, see what you think.
For your comfort, please make use of all the bells doors.
All right, buddy. Hello, mate. You all right?
How's it going?
I was so far away then. Mate, where's the top? I've got my scarf.
The scarf is not enough.
Come on. Know this. You skipping? I'm not. I'm up for it. I promise you.
Nervous?
Yeah? You've got this.
Yeah? What are you saying?
It's in the bag, isn't it? Now I'm excited. Let's go. Sun's out as well. See you go. See you go. See you go. There it is. Now I'm nervous.
I knew you were.
Look at his head on it. What are you playing at? Why am I so pathetic? Come on, boys, let's go. That's it. Let no one see me. Come on. I'm not coping. I can't take this. I'll just keep pretending everything's all right. Honestly, I needed that so bad. Oh, yeah, I'll see you soon, all right?
Yeah, mate, before you go, I'm just going to say, are you all right? Just, it's fine if you're not. Yeah? Yeah? Come on, mate. You can talk to me, don't be silly. What's up?
Just like... Mate, honestly, I don't know where to start.
Wow.
I'm not sure if you've seen that or not, but what do you think?
Many things. My first thoughts right at the very beginning was, I want to meet those two people that you referred to there. Because, you know, whether it's soccer or, you know, Australian rules football or gridiron, is like, it's all relative. And so that problem is everywhere. It's not only in one code and not the other. So to think that there's two people that are thinking like that is just phenomenal. It's like, that's leadership right there. When I do some of my talks, and probably more so when there's more people, or if I'm in an elevated position visually, is I'll grab a bit of paper and screw it up and throw it on the floor. And they go, that's rubbish. And people agree that that looks like it's a piece of rubbish. So I said, if I walk past that now, and then and leave it, and the next person comes along and says, you know, there's rubbish on the ground, then I'm complicit, because I could have picked it up. And mental health's just like the same as that video. Is like, I actually believe that people do see that and they choose to walk past. And that fellow in the video clearly didn't.
Yes.
And to me, that's almost like where the teaching begins. And, you know, in our pub, that's where it's at. Is, you know, rather than me spotting something and turning a blind eye, I go, can't be bothered, don't want to be involved, not sure, whatever it is, I'm busy, is like, you can't actually walk past it. If you see it and you do nothing, you're complicit. And that's where I get from here. That is just like, that probably the last 3 minutes of that video then could be a training video.
Yes. Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah. And I said that they last week they played it at the half time between Spurs and Seagulls, which is Brighton Hove. And to your point, the Samaritans are getting involved and helping people to you know, here's what you do. Which brings me to, you were doing something extraordinarily practical, and that is you opened a pub. That's not practical.
It's logical.
That's logical.
Yeah.
It might be a hobby. It might be a fastest way to lose your money next door what we're buying a racehorse. But it wasn't just a pub.
We did that too.
You did too. You opened a pub in Deepwater, which is in rural New South Wales, Australia. It is the first mental health clinic pub in Australia. And your thinking is, at least when you and I visited you there last month, thank you for the hospitality. I had a slow drive the next day. Appreciate the fun we had. Your thinking is, pubs used to be a real centre of community, and they often are not any longer for a whole range of reasons. But you've designed it so it's a safe place for conversation. You have your books all over the place. You have posters there. People know there's something different in this place. Some people know it's set up for that. Other people just come to the pub and go, this is a bit different. Tell me what inspired you about that, and what's happening since you set that up.
It segues back into what we were saying before, Pod, is that like, all of my life, all I ever try to do is get $4 out of one. And so I continually see that, you know, there's this money squandered left, right, and centre. And you know, one of my other voices has always been, if I could just be Prime Minister for a day,
What would I change?
what could I do, you know? And so that fuels me. And so I've always believed that the pub's the hub, and in rural Australia particularly, you know, they're an undervalued, underutilized resource. And I know already from, you know, how my book is, and the number of rejections that I get based on budget from government departments that they can't afford an $11 book. And so for quite some time, I'd always sort of imagined that, like, what if we could open up a pub as a mental health pub? And I'm like, no one in the world could sell that concept to a government ever. Like, just no chance.
No.
There's
too many hoops, too many bureaucracies.
no chance. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Same again. If you know, if not me, then who? So I'm like, with my you know, my wife, we're like, let's do this. And, you know, hotels, unless you're really, really lucky, hotels may or may not have 50% occupancy of rooms. So now you've got capacity to, you know, protect a person. So if a person's in a crisis, we've probably more often than not, most nights of the week, got one spare room somewhere.
Okay.
So now we can house a person.
Okay.
And then if you've got a commercial kitchen and staff on, you can feed someone off your own pocket.
Yeah.
Pretty cost effectively too, if someone's in the ditch a bit.
Yeah.
And if they want to have a coffee, we can shout them a coffee.
Yeah. Which you do. You got a big sign outside the front door.
All of those sorts of things. So it's like, being kind to someone doesn't need to cost a fortune.
Yep.
And so the whole concept of the pub was that we would have staff that have been hired for kindness and trained for skill, and including ourselves, and that we would set the pub up in a way so that it felt like you're meant to have conversations in here. You know, if you go to, probably, as a guess, 80% of all pubs and bars and things in Australia today, you can't actually sit at the bar anymore and have a drink.
Not at all.
It's gone. And the whole purpose of going to the pub forever and a day was, apart from seeing your friends, is that you could go and sit at the bar. You don't need an appointment. You don't need to be invited. You don't have to do any planning at all. You can just go and plonk your bum on a seat at the bar, talk to the fella next to you or the bar person, and away you go. And for a variety of reasons, that basic thing has been taken away. And so I felt there's a whole lot of things that we can put back into the pub and repurpose it as a mental health pub where it's safe to speak. You can just come and sit in a lounge chair that looks like it's from your grandmother's house. You can fall asleep in it. You don't need to spend any money with it. We're not a pub that's just focused on selling alcohol. We have so many non-alcoholic offerings at the pub, and it's worked.
And you've got this in your kind of dining room area. You've got this long table, and it forces people to sit down and talk with each other, right? So it's like it feels natural, right? It's not construed. It's not like, hey, let's go on Instagram and see how clever we are. You walk in this room, as you said, the furniture could be from your grandmother's house, and there's your aunt's couch, and there's a small chair, but there's a long table where if you want to have a meal, you're sitting beside 10 or 15 other people doing the same thing, and conversations just happen.
If you go to someone's house for a dinner party, you don't all sit at tables of two.
That's right.
And if you go to a birthday party, you don't all have 2 here and 4 there and you split up around the room. If you go to a function, you might have 10 to a table. But, you know, if you look back through some amazing TV shows and things that, you know, that might be made in the last 20 or 50 years, but they've been based on something that happened 5 centuries ago, everything happened around the long table. And so that's just a concept that we wanted to bring into the pub, that will take away the option for people to sit on their own.
Yeah.
And if they're uncomfortable and that doesn't suit them, well, maybe we're not their pub.
Yeah.
You know? And so the locals were appalled that the new people have come in and bought the pub, and they've moved all the furniture from being 2s and 4s and 6s to this long thing, and I'll never sit here, and, you guys are stupid and all these other sorts of comments coming at us.
Yeah.
And little by little, they're like, you wouldn't believe it. I just met my neighbour.
Yeah. I didn't know it was my neighbour.
Didn't know my neighbour.
Yeah, yeah,
you know, so
yeah.
it was really, really intentional to force people to have conversation.
Yeah.
And like with my book, one of the unexpected upsides that I never anticipated is that when you're on a long table and you don't know the people that you're sitting with, the mobile phones get put away.
Yeah, right.
And so if you're sitting with your family and friends, someone might follow the sport or pick up a phone or check a text or whatever the case is. But when you put three couples together all on the table and they don't know each other, no one picks up the phone because it looks so bloody rude, and it is. But when it's your family and people that you know closely, you do it. You don't.
It's easy to be rude to your family as opposed to strangers. Yeah.
And so, you know, that's one of the magical things that happen when you put people on a long table. They end up having a dinner party that they didn't expect to. We had one lady who was staying across the road in an Airbnb, and on some Sundays we do what's called a chef's table, where no one gets to know what the food is. It's a set price, and the chef decides you're getting what you get given type of thing, right?
Right.
And so it's mysterious. So we had some people staying that we didn't know that were across the road, and it turned out that it was the lady's 60th birthday from memory. And so we stuck her at the head of the table, and all the other people didn't know that we were booked out. I think we had on the table, then it held 30 and now it holds 36. So it was booked out. There was 30 people on the table and I made her the head. And then I interrupted everyone and said, oh, we've got a special guest here tonight. This lady here, it's her 60th birthday. And so now she's having a birthday party. She had the funnest night. My gosh, she fully let loose. She was just an amazing lady. But we could have just put her over there on a table for two, and her and her husband shared a bottle of wine and had their dessert, and off they went. I would think that that's probably the funnest impromptu birthday party she's ever had.
She'll never forget that.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. And people have driven like from Western Australia to your pub to get to, because they've read the book and go, I want to go and see this guy's pub. And for those folks who don't know, that's like a 6 to 9 hours drive, depending on where you're coming from, right?
If it's from Western Australia, it's 60 hours.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll put a 0 on. It's very far, depending on where you are in Western Australia. People more and more, Pod, are changing the route that they're on to make sure that it incorporates a trip past the pub, because they've either got the book or they've heard about the pub or they've lost someone or they've been touched in some capacity, but they're like, I need to see this for myself.
Yeah.
Because there's people that, can't imagine that you can combine mental health in a pub.
Yeah.
And we've done it so successfully.
Yeah. And I should say, for folks who are trying to imagine this, it's not like a pub where there's, people wearing, white nurses' uniforms that signifies a mental health clinic. It's an open atmosphere where conversations are encouraged. And if you are in any way unsafe, it's a place where you can go to be safe. And because it's in that kind of atmosphere, there's no shutting down of conversations. It's just like, come in. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the day we opened the doors, it was already happening. We thought, wonder how long it'll take for word to get out. This is what we're doing. It happened while we were renovating. And we're like, I think we're onto something here. I always had this instinct that it would be right.
Yeah.
I never once lost my belief that this is the formula for Australia and villages probably around the world. It's like if you stop bringing people together, then their mental health will deteriorate, because a conversation might be enough.
Do you think is there an opportunity for other publicans to do what you're doing, or does it require a certain type of person like you are to do this?
No, I don't think so. I think it's really scalable. We had 22 art pieces commissioned for the pub for different types of situations, and just they serve a whole lot of purpose. Rather than having a pub that's just got VB signs adorned on every spare piece of wall, we've got these mental health posters, artworks that we've had done And all they're really designed to do is to create another conversation that someone might say, oh, who did the art? Or what made you do that art? Or how come you've got that drawing? I'm like, glad you asked. But people soon cotton on that something else is going on here at the pub. It happens pretty quick. You know, you go and sit in the toilets and there's messaging in there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in our men's toilet, up on the urinal where the chain is, you know, there's someone's got with a black texter, a marking pen, and written on there that if your mate tells you that he's got mental health problems, he's not pulling your chain.
Yeah.
And so people they get the place really, really quickly. And what's happened as part of all of that is the people that are local that come to our pub understand what we do. And it's guided the clientele that we've got. Like we've got just the right people, if that makes sense, is the ones who know what we do.
Want to come.
They want to come because they're also safe.
Yeah.
They want to be able to be there on their own or drag me off to the side or drag my wife around and have a chat to her.
Yeah.
Is that it's like they can get some stuff off their chest and know that it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. You're still energetic, passionate, full of drive. In many senses, you're just getting going. You and I have chats about where you want to bring Just One Reason, which has just became a registered charity recently. So you've got a whole lot of plans for that. Many folks who are hit midlife start losing energy. So how are you maintaining your energy? How are you maintaining your drive?
I think for me is I know what my strengths and weaknesses are, and rather than looking at the mental health issues that I've got as being a weakness, I see them as an asset.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, you know, when my brain doesn't go to sleep at 2 a.m, I choose to be productive. And so I find that when people say, how do you get so much done in a day? I'm like, because I don't sleep. I have this condition and my brain is just always on. And so it like, what a waste to have some skills and just lay there and do nothing versus, well, I'm going to get up or I'm going to type this or I'm just like a what do you call it? An energizer bunny.
Yeah.
And it's because I have mental health problems that I can do that. So I feel like I've tapped into it and I've got this bottomless source of energy and ideas and things that will never rest.
So it's like what they say in software, make it a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
Here's what happens for you, so I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you not let the old man in the sense of, yes, you are using your who you are to your advantage, but how are you also preventing decline or negativity, etc.?
Mentally, I find it pretty easy. And I guess there's a part of me that might look like I'm really complex and complicated, and maybe I am, but I feel like underneath everything, I'm just a thongs and footy shorts person. And so, you know, I can sleep in the back of the car and not give a shit if I have to, or stay in a 1-star motel. Like, you know, just I'm basic. And I think keeping things basic helps as well. Is that I'm not precious that I can't stay here or I can't touch this or, you know, the forks aren't straight or whatever it is. So I think that part there, what I haven't shared so far in amongst all of our other things is probably my single biggest obstacle is that for as long as I can remember, I've been injured in some capacity. And so because of that, I guess I know that my strength's my brain. And if I can't do what I used to be able to do, then at least I can still use my brain.
Yeah.
And you know, that also triggers a major anxiety to me, is that I suffer from extreme claustrophobia. And so having MRIs is like, isn't there another way that you can research and get, you know, what you need to get from my body instead of putting me into this
chamber?
Yeah. And so, you know, in the last 6 months alone, I've had spinal surgery, a knee operation, and 4 weeks ago, an emergency appendicitis. It's like, that's the story of my life. I think I've had 19 surgeries now, 30 broken bones. You couldn't count how many stitches
Right.
and things that I've had over the years.
Yeah.
And the one constant is my brain.
Okay. What would the 75-year-old version of Stuart O'Neill be asking of you now?
I wonder whether it would be asking in the way you framed it. I would think, has your book sold 1 million copies yet?
That's brilliant. because it's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably be it. Like, I feel like the trajectory is just getting steeper.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would probably, if I don't get it to 1 million copies, then the book hasn't failed. I might have.
Stuart, it's a pleasure having you here. As I said, I was glad we stumbled across each other on whatever platform we did. Love what you're doing. Excited that Osh from our team is going with you to record your great work over the next couple of weeks. What's one piece of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners before we finish up?
One piece of wisdom. If ever you've sat glued to your phone, let's say, I've been through gosh knows how many cyclones and floods. And when that's coming, and I don't know what other people do, but I know enough people that do this, is they sit glued to their phones with the technology and they're watching the bomb radar to see where the storm is and what the floods are doing, and that everything passes. So when you're in the eye of the storm and it's feeling like this is it, the storm passes every time. And so you have to trick your brain and just be patient and let it pass, because it will.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure. I've waited for, a week now to record this session, because the conversation with Stuart is such an important one, I feel. It was a heavy topic. It was a topic about humanity. And it was a topic I wanted to sit with before I stopped to pause and share some reflections on the same conversation. The first thing that struck me, and it's in Stuart's very generous sharing of his own story, is the fall can happen fast, even though recovery is a process. You know, there's a cliche that says it can take years to build up a reputation and minutes to have it destroyed. Stuart's story begins with heartache, very sudden heartache. In his case, a marriage collapse that triggered a spiral into suicidal thinking. He reminded me that you don't need years of depression to reach a breaking point. Sometimes the fall comes quickly and quietly. People are often surprised to learn that. We naively assume that a long period of depression precedes a suicide attempt, but that's not true, as Stuart shared with us. He also shared quite honestly about how men are often blindsided by a separation in their relationships, be it marriage or other romantic relationships, not because they're oblivious to the relationship, but because they didn't grasp how deep the emotional drift between them and the other person had become. When the news arrives that their partner no longer wants the relationship to continue, it can be devastating. It can be a complete shock at the same time. And for some of us, it leads to a deep and sudden personal crisis. My reflection on this is that a crisis can sneak up on you, even when life seems stable. And so having a sense of awareness, having a sense of humility about, maybe I'm facing into or having a crisis creep on me, and having a sense of connection can save your life before you even realize you're in danger. So staying connected with your friends, with your mates, with your buddies is the important action, the important reflection here. Have no issues in letting someone know that you're off. You don't feel well. You're concerned about something. Maybe you're devastated about something. Have no shame in sharing with someone, hey, I am at risk of doing something that I might regret. It might be the best thing you can do. My second reflection, and I don't want to rush from, hey, a sad story to a heroic outcome, because that'd be far too big a jump. But Stuart did share with us something that I think is really important, which is pain can birth purpose. In the moment he planned his death, he found one reason to not go ahead with it. It was actually guilt. Guilt that somebody else, in his case his boys, would carry the burden of his choice. And that single flash of awareness sparked just one reason for him to not go ahead, to postpone the decision. It was a small but very powerful book, has since come out of that decision for him, and it has saved countless lives based on the feedback he's received. And as he shared with us in our conversation, psychiatrists, universities, police forces, the defense forces carry the book and recommend it because it's useful. So my reflection for myself here is you don't need a grand purpose to survive a dark moment. You just need one reason. It could be a child, it could be a friend, it could be your mom, it could be a promise to somebody you haven't fulfilled yet, it could be your dog, it could be your car. Who's going to drive my car? Who's going to drive my ute? So purpose can begin really small, but it grows. You know, I wasn't planning on sharing my story with Stuart because my story pales into insignificance to what he shared. But I'm kind of glad that I did. No, I'm not. I'm glad that I did. Because my story illustrates that life can be unexpectedly shit at times. And out of the blue, it can hit us hard. In my conversation with Stuart, I shared that I needed to feed my son the next day. And the idea that my neighbors wouldn't know what to do was enough of a reason to go, okay, I need to postpone that thought process I have. That happened the next day, it happened again the third day. And for me, finding a very simple reason to be awake, to feed my son, is why I'm here years later recording this. The third thing that strikes me is a book that teaches the brain to fight back. Like how simple and how powerful is that? Now, the just one reason process is deceptively simple. It's a mental circuit breaker. When the brain says, I can't do this anymore, the book says, hold on, here's a question. And the reply is, okay, not today. It teaches you to go, not today. And for me, this is both a reflection and a hack. The reflection is you can outsmart the darkness. You can delay decision. You can push it back 24 hours. Survival isn't about strength. Sometimes. It's about buying yourself time. And the hack is asking the question that will lead you to find one reason, just one reason. It's as profound and as simple as that. And the last thing I want to share that really I found very powerful for me, and I'd be interested from you guys who are listening to this, what you thought. But his comment at the end was, everything passes, even the storm. When you're in the eye of the storm, just remember it always passes. So don't make permanent or tough or big decisions when you're in the midst of temporary pain. The old cliche from 10 years ago is don't send the email when you're angry. Wait till the next day because the anger might dissipate. Stuart's message is the same. Don't make a big decision when you're in the middle of pain. Wait. Wait out the weather. The storm will pass. Hold your ground. It will move on. And so will you. And so for me, the core takeaways from my conversation with Stuart and his own journey, it actually isn't about death. It's about rediscovering life through service, through simplicity, and through conversation. And for any of us in midlife, the biggest thing I'm taking from this is talk. Talk before you tighten up. Have no shame in sharing with a friend or two friends or even a stranger. But talk before you tighten up. Build a reason to not do something before you lose the strength to carry that out. And remember, strength is not silence. If you're in the storm, and we will all be in the storm, find one reason and don't let the old man in.
If you need someone to talk to in Australia, call Lifeline on 13 11 14. Men's Line Australia on 1300 789 978. Suicide Callback Service on 1300 659 467. Beyond Blue on 1300 22 4636. Headspace on 1800 650 890. Q-Life on 1800 184 527 or Kids Helpline on 1800 551 800.